Starting event. There we go. Hello. Test. Everyone can hear us? Feel free to let us know in the chat.
Hi, everyone.
No, you do not need art supplies. Although you could be making art if you like. Okay, well, welcome everyone. Welcome to another AGA live event. I'm your host, Dara Armsden, and I am Head of Education and Learning here at the Art Gallery of Alberta. I am joined by Olga Perju, who is a registered Canadian art therapist and certified counselor, currently living in Edmonton. Olga and I have known each other for about 4 years, and I am thrilled for an opportunity to investigate and share with a broader audience some of our ongoing conversations about art, creativity, health, and education. Having received her master's degree at Concordia University in Montreal, Olga was immersed in community open art studios, also known as Art Hives. Her practice is focused on working with children, youth, and community. Here in Edmonton, Olga has worked with Edmonton Public Schools and then most recently has moved into private practice. Welcome, Olga. Thank you for agreeing to chat with me today.
Thanks so much for having me, Dara. This is incredible. I'm so happy to be here.
Great. So today our topic encompasses the toll that the recent public health crisis is having on our mental health, how creative and art and creative practices support our individual well-being, and finally, the role that art plays in boosting healthy communities. Before we delve into that specifically, I wonder, Olga, if you could jump in and maybe give us an overview of what art therapy is.
For sure. So art therapy is a clinical practice that combines psychotherapy, so talk therapy, as a lot of people know it, and a creative process. So an art therapist has specialized training in the field. And a lot of our offices kind of look more like art studios than they do like the traditional couch and chair type scenario that we're used to seeing. And they're full of art materials, all kinds of, paints and markers, pencil crayons, papers, everything from clay to things that you can make structures into. And clients kind of have free reign of what they would like to use in their session. So by engaging in the creative process, this allows clients of all ages and all abilities to process their experiences and gain insights, as well as meeting their therapeutic goals. And that's what they're working on with the support of the art therapist. So art therapy could help regulate emotions, process big life experiences, gain insight into what might be going on for an individual, could help boost self-esteem, learn new skills, among many other things. And you don't need to have any kind of art experience or training to see an art therapist. It's just about the way that you want to express yourself and what makes sense to you.
Amazing. Can you share with us what got you interested in art therapy?
Yeah, so I've always been fascinated in humans and why we do what we do. And then I was also really interested in art making and the sacred process of how that has healing properties in and of itself. My journey started actually in third year of my undergraduate degree, where my painting professor looked at me and said, there's a thing called art therapy, because he knew I was so interested in psychology and art. And I looked back at him and was like, really? He's like, yeah, I have a friend who's an art therapist. She doesn't have a job working as an art therapist, but I'm sure you could figure it out. And here I am, over a decade later.
That's really good. It's amazing how many of those conversations happen in studios, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
How do we, where do we choose or how do we choose those things, right? But it always, I feel like, starts with a conversation. Like that happened to me when a friend of mine was like, you should be a teacher. And I was like, really? But I'm an artist. And then, here I am.
Here you are.
Amazing. So I really appreciate that sort of that story. Can you talk a little bit about what the connection between art and mental health is and what that means to you?
For sure. So, I mean, mental health is a state that includes psychological and emotional well-being, and that can look differently in different people. And then I think that, you know, we also refer to it as like mental wellness, mental health, like these terms are kind of interchangeable. And wellness to me really means a state of like equilibrium where all of your needs are met and you feel like you're thriving in life. That could include social supports, the environment that you're in that has a huge impact in how we feel. And really, humans have been making marks for thousands of years. I like to say that, you know, since dinosaurs roamed, we were making marks and drawing pictures of our experiences in caves. And we know that we feel good when we're making art. Even watching somebody else make art or looking at art can make us feel at ease, more calm. And it can increase our mood, stabilize our emotions, and shift even our physiological state. So you might, if you're checking in with yourself, you might notice that if you're feeling, you know, overwhelmed or stressed or nervous, and then you start coloring or even doodling on the side of a page, it can shift the way that your body's responding to whatever's going on for you. So art making can be therapeutic, and then when facilitated by a trained art therapist, it can also help us overcome a lot of life challenges.
Okay. So one of the questions that I have is, given our current state of affairs, how do you think that the COVID-19 pandemic is affecting our mental health right now?
Well, it sure feels like it turned everything upside down. So we went into 2020 thinking that we had all of these upcoming events, milestones, maybe even our regular daily routines that we kind of like anticipated and expected to be a certain way. And this pandemic has absolutely flipped everything around. And there's, yeah, definitely a feeling of, you know, more anxiety, more stress, maybe feeling like you're a bit shaky, your foundation isn't so solid anymore, especially because we don't really know what the future holds or what is going to happen in the long run or when this is going to end. So a lot of those unknowns can really spark a lot of anxiety in us. Maybe feeling like we don't have control, worrying more, additional stressors from, you know, maybe unemployment or the fear of losing your job, staying at home with kids full time while trying to juggle other responsibilities could have a lot of really negative impacts on our lives.
What general recommendations might you make for people that are currently social distancing, maybe have some additional worries, are, you know, just trying to kind of navigate this really extraordinary circumstance?
Yeah, I mean, despite how difficult this time has been, I'm also blown away at how resourceful and creative humans are. So hearing stories of birthday parties being celebrated from sidewalks in front of somebody's house, or reconnecting with long lost friends that maybe you hadn't spoken to in months or years, and now using virtual platforms to do so. Yeah, even walking around in our neighborhood and seeing so many messages of love and hope in people's windows. I don't know if any of those things would have happened had we not been in this situation. And of course, people respond differently and cope differently with this pandemic and our social distancing. I think whatever you're feeling is okay. Maybe even some days you're feeling like, wow, I don't know when this is going to end. This is freaking me out. And some days you might say, maybe it's not so big a deal. I'm just going to follow AHS's guidelines and live my life, and it's going to be okay, or somewhere in between. But no matter what you're feeling, you have every right to feel it, and that's what you should be feeling, even though it can maybe feel like it's going up and down. Definitely check in with yourself. Go back to ways that have worked for you in the past to cope or deal with stressful situations. Whatever works to soothe you. Maybe it's going outside for a walk around your neighborhood, or turning on your favorite TV show, listening to music, or journaling. And then also try to stay open to new things. So maybe you get curious about something that you see online on Instagram, or somebody shares, a friend shares with you something that they tried. You have nothing to lose really in trying it yourself and seeing what kind of effects that has on you. But just being gentle with yourself and kind of letting go of any expectations that you may have had of how your daily life was going to go, or what your goals were going to be for this year, and just slowing down.
Great, thank you for that. What are some strategies that you might recommend to get started in something creative? We kind of talked about this before, and we did a little Q&A on the website, but how do we get started, and how do we silence that inner critic that's like, no, you can't do this? It's I don't know. It's like the white page challenge, right?
The white page.
How do you lay down that first mark?
Yeah, crumple the white page if you have to. The hardest part is definitely just getting started. And I think something that I find useful is going away from literally the white page and maybe using materials that you haven't used before. And being creative could be doing many things, from woodworking in your garage to build a raised bed for your garden, or it could be using a lot of different materials, and sometimes that gets you out of your head. Try baking something that you've never baked before. There's a lot of creativity that goes into cooking and baking. And I think just being conscious that your end goal is just to make something. It's not about it being good or bad. And it can only be for you. It doesn't have to have an audience. It could be something that is just a way for you to express what's going on for you in that moment. And sometimes that helps as well. You can even make art and destroy it after, tear it up in 100 little pieces. It doesn't have to last. It's more about the process of making something. That's important.
You're speaking my love language. I think about this a lot in the work that I do here at the AGA. So, it's important stuff. What kind of recommendations might you make for parents or even kids
to get making art?
Yeah.
My favorite thing is the recycling bin. I think there are so many treasures. My own house is right now got we bought a printer, and we have this big box that was transformed into a fire station. It also doubles as a reading nook. Our little guy loves taking screwdrivers and batteries right now. He's 2.5, and tinkering around with things around the house. But whenever I'm out of ideas, I turn to the recycling bin and see what I can pull out from there. For little kiddos, I think just playing into their curiosity and about the world around them, even though they've lived in their house for hundreds, if not thousands of days, there's always something new to discover and play with. So as long as it's safe for them to use, I definitely would encourage you to even take out the toolkit, maybe pull out all the things that are sharp or can damage, like maybe hammers under supervision, but otherwise just let them play and let them poke and let them touch and feel and make whatever they're drawn to making. For the older kids, I mean, it's definitely an opportunity to get creative and get some new skills. Visual diaries are really great, and those can be in books, or they can be like in physical visual journals or digital formatting. Maybe a picture a day documenting their experience right now. That could either be shared on social media or just for their own viewing pleasure, so that they can remember what this whole shebang was all about. And then, yeah, building on skills, maybe practicing cooking or baking, picking up spatulas, exploring things in the kitchen, following a recipe. It's not only a life skill, but it also lets them be creative and build their confidence.
Awesome. I'm just gonna plug. I'm gonna interrupt you and plug our youth council account, because we are posting 100 art prompts.
Yes, you are.
Right? Yeah, almost every day. And so our goal is to get teens active and creative, and that can take any form, but we're trying to encourage everyone to just do it 15 minutes a day. That's it. Mm-hmm. Something creative for 15 minutes a day. So I really appreciate you saying sort of doing something like a daily practice is really, helpful, and it helps to kind of process some of those emotions or feelings. It can really, and you mentioned this too, like just getting out of your own head, which I think a lot of us are finding ourselves in. And parents, as parents, I think this is something that happens too. So do you have anything specific for parents that they should be mindful of, or?
Oh gosh, I think the biggest thing is just taking care of yourself. Really being mindful about what does it mean for me to feel good? What do I need to fill my cup? The better we feel as parents, the better we can parent our kids. We're definitely their barometers, so they might feel emotions, and we're the ones there helping them to regulate them. So, and they also pick up on everything that we feel. They might not understand the complexity of what's going on right now, or the severity of it, but they do know that something is up, and that maybe mom and dad or caregiver is feeling stressed by it, that there's something different in the house. So anything that parents can do to check in with themselves and take care of their mental well-being, their physical, just thinking of the whole spectrum of humanness, spiritual well-being, and making sure that your cup is full, so that when you're hanging out with your kiddos, that you're present and you're helping them deal with their big emotions without being flooded yourself.
That's good advice.
And it's easier said than done.
That's right. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So I want to switch gears, because I want to talk a little bit about some of the community work that you've done. And so a big part of your practice is working with community art hives. So can you talk a little bit about what an art hive is?
For sure. So an art hive is a community-based open art studio, which means that it's embedded in a neighborhood or a community. It's open to anybody, and there are art materials there so that folks who walk in through the doors can create something. There's no real direction or directive other than use your hands to make, create, be creative, be inspired by those around you, or just tap into your own imagination and make something. There's no guidelines for how long you have to stay, or yeah, visits can be, 30 seconds or 3 hours, depending on how long the studio's open. And it's really encouraging folks to reconnect to their maker self. They're creators, they can be teachers, artists, students, trying on these different roles, these different hats that maybe you don't get to practice or tap into in your everyday life. And these art hives can look at many different ways. Janice Timbatos is a professor at Concordia University, and I give her full credit for pollinating art hives and spreading them all across not only Canada, but the world now. She is someone that I admire a lot and was my professor when I was doing my master's degree in Concordia, and I've learned so much from her. And it's really, the foundation. She's brought forward all the theories and the foundation of what art hives are and why they're so healing in communities.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of some of the terminology that is linked to an art hive is third space. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about what a third space is and sort of why it's a benefit?
Yeah, so a third space, if we were to think of our home as the first place and our work as the second, art hives fall in this category of third places or spaces, where we can be maybe more creative, engage in activities with friends or brand new acquaintances that we meet only in that space. These spaces aren't new. So things like cafes or public libraries, if you were to imagine yourself in those spaces, that's the feeling of a third space. It's like in between home and work, where folks gather maybe from that community, outside that community. Maybe they're just passing through or they're invested and live in the community. So there's this real cross-pollination of different people that enter the space, and they're there for a purpose of sharing ideas. Within the context of art hives, it's for making art and building community.
Lovely. And how does this space or place or art hive benefit a community?
Yeah, I mean, it's a place for open dialogue and communication, a lot of self-expression. It sparks a lot of social action and change. I've really seen it transform communities because neighbors from that community have a chance to get together, and they otherwise might not have. And they can share their experiences about their daily life and maybe their struggles and put their heads together and come up with a resolution. Or just different options or opinions on what's going on. And if there is an issue in the community that enough people want to solve, then they have more individuals who are buying into it and coming up with a solution together. So it really helps break down stereotypes. You might cross paths with individuals that you otherwise wouldn't talk to at all. It definitely builds connection. You can reconnect with folks that maybe you haven't seen in a while. And all that is tied together and woven into this art making space. There's a lot of conversation that comes out of sitting and making something with your hands when you're kind of distracted in that way. There's this like energy that flows and conversation just moves. Sometimes there's a lot of silence, and other times the studios can be really lively and fun.
One of the things about art hives that I'm really intrigued about is just accessibility. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, so the dream is to have an art hive in every neighborhood across Canada, if not the world, really. So they are open studios. So they have opening hours, which vary depending on whatever studio decides on, and folks can walk in off the street, enter the space. A lot of it is sparked by curiosity when you're walking by a space, you know, a zillion times, and then you're like, okay, well, there's people in there doing something together. Okay. And another day you're like, oh, they're making art, maybe? Like, is it? So that's curiosity definitely draws people in. And yeah, storefront being on the main floor is definitely something that we consider when starting Art Hives, making it accessible for folks to actually enter the space itself. And then because it's a third space, I mean, it's kind of this in-between world. You don't need to have a membership to enter. You don't need to belong to any kind of institution. So it can feel more accessible in terms of not belonging, not being like a university that you need to enter and feel weary about entering because you're not a student. And there's a lot of richness because it's such like an intersection of all of the folks that make up a neighborhood. There's a lot of sharing of skills and experiences. So somebody might start doing some weaving or a certain technique that they know from maybe one of their ancestors or whatever culture they're from. And that might spark someone to ask them, how do you do that? Can you teach me? So there's a sense of pride and accomplishment in sharing their craft. And then everybody gets something new out of it. And there's this exchange of skill. Yeah.
Wow. I was wondering if you might talk a little bit about the Art Hive that you started in Montreal.
For sure. So I was really fortunate to be there when Janice was starting her first Art Hive, La Ruche d'Art. So there was a group of us, students and community members, who got together and launched that first Art Hive, which was a huge learning experience. We went into it not really knowing what it was going to be about, and came out of it, a small group of us wanting to start another Art Hive. So that's when CoOps Le Milieu began. So a group of us started the Solidarity Cooperative in another neighborhood in Montreal, and differently structured than La Ruche. There's a lot of similarities between the two spaces, but then a lot of differences as well. And I think that's expected when starting an Art Hive, because the folks who start them have different dreams and different realities, and the neighborhoods themselves have different needs as well. So CoOps Le Milieu was started as a solidarity cooperative, and we had to, find a space, like start from ground zero, find a space and think of what our mission was and what community we wanted to be in, how we were going to pay our bills. So we came up with the idea of having a arts and crafts pay by weight space. It was like it's a store where you can get art materials, and you don't have to pay per item, but you pay by weight. So you fill a bin, and with whatever you'd like from the studio, we weigh it, and then you pay what you can actually for the materials. And then we also had a little cafe, and made some treats to go along with, your lattes. And that was another way that we made money. We ran a lot of workshops that were facilitated by community members, led classes, and applied for a heck of a lot of grants, for sure.
Can you just define for me, because I'm not sure what a solidarity cooperative is.
Yeah, so the reason why we chose, it's a way of structuring a business. So it's one of the types of cooperative that you can have. And the thing that defines a solidarity co-op is that it has three main categories. So the members are either user members, worker members, or support or community members. which means that everybody who is involved in the space or in the studio has a voice, and there's a fair representation of how the studio is going to be run. So we had a board of directors that kind of took the lead, but we're always checking in with the community members and working members and user members to make sure that we were on track and we were giving the community what they needed. And we wanted this to be the structure that we used because we felt responsible to respond to what the community needed. It wasn't a community that any of the founding members lived in, so we were visitors there, and we really wanted to make sure that the community itself had a voice, and that whatever we were trying to do in that community was driven by the members of the neighborhood and not by us as outsiders.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that clears things up for me. Thank you. Okay. What is, given your experience, what does it take to facilitate a successful art hive? You kind of alluded to, like making sure that the community is sort of centered,
yeah,
in the project, but are there any other?
Yeah, can I say blood, sweat, and tears, or is that a bit too cliche? I think one of the biggest learnings that we took away from starting Co-op Le Milieu was that you have to start small. And we definitely, with that project, started big. We were open 6 days a week for a lot of hours in the day. So sometimes it felt quite daunting, and we were putting a lot of time and energy into it. Nevertheless, the community members, once they got to feel like they were part of the studio and part of the project, really took ownership of the space and were able to help out so much. But definitely it takes an idea, I think, of what you would like your art hive to be like. There's no real template for it. So somebody who has this idea and passion for opening an art hive, and then other folks who have buy-in and would like to be part of that vision. I think the work is a lot easier when you have a group of dedicated people. So if you're thinking of this metaphor of hives and bees, I mean, one bee couldn't do what all the bees do in a hive. So surrounding yourself with other people that can support you is really important. We really believe that art can be made out of many, many things, and there's an abundance of materials out there. So asking for free donations from the community was essential to starting our studio. And we were flooded with the amount of materials that we received from the community. And apart from that, I think a really great resource that was put together by Rachel Cheney, who works very closely with Janice and is one of my dear friends, and put together a PDF document that can be accessed on arthives.org. That kind of gives you an outline of what you need to know about starting an art hive. Just a snapshot. And of course, everybody makes it their own, but it's a really useful, really in-depth document. That's a good starting point.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Now, are there any art hives here in Alberta?
There sure are. There's one at the Mustard Seed Neighborhood Center, which is right close by my studio here, in Ritchie in Edmonton. And there is one in a church over by 124th Street, and I apologize. Laura Foster facilitates that space, and I do not remember the name of the church, but I'm sure we can get that resource out if anybody's interested. There's some, they're kind of all over the place, and there's one at the YMCA as well. And again, the Art Hive website is a really great resource. There's a map on there that's interactive, and you can see where art hives are in Edmonton and see which ones you can access more easily.
Sure. For someone that's interested in joining an art hive, what do we need to know?
You just show up. Like many things right now, art hives have gone virtual. So folks are meeting online and making art together, having great dialogue, and then sharing what they make. There's Facebook groups and Zoom meetings popping up all over the place. And again, arthives.org is a great resource for that. They have an extensive list of all of the virtual art hives with links to how you can access them. But you really don't need much. You don't need to bring your own materials. I mean, if you're working on a project and you'd like to continue working on it in an art hive, you're welcome to do so. But there are definitely lots of materials for you to use. It's really about kind of like all art making ventures. You just have to start. You just have to walk in. You just have to make a mark.
Wonderful. Lovely. Okay, I'm interested in connecting this back to sort of the pandemic in just a small way. Recently, the Alberta government has initiated a staged reopening strategy. So
yes.
How do you think that might change like an art hive, or will it change it at all?
I honestly think it's too early to tell.
Okay.
I think some of the things that may change is maybe the number of people that can access a studio. Sometimes you'll enter an art hive pre-pandemic and it will be full, buzzing with people making art, to the point where you can't even find a seat for yourself. So I wonder about that, and I wonder about regulations in terms of cleanliness, sanitizing the space, hand washing for participants. But I don't know. I think no matter what happens, we're going to be creative and come up with really great solutions to reconnect.
Thank you. Yeah, that's lovely. So I want to zoom out again. So we've been talking about art hives, and my phone is ringing in my office, and this was like my nightmare. So thanks, friend. Oh man. Okay, well, I'll get to my question now that it's not ringing anymore. So I want to zoom out a little bit and say, like art hives are just one strategy for sort of building the health of the community. But how do we maintain that healthy community now that we're in a pandemic?
How do we maintain that healthy community? I think making small changes for ourselves and for those around us, bringing the focus on maybe you first, making sure that you're well, but keeping in mind that even a small action goes a long way, and taking those bite-sized pieces. There's some really, community leagues, I think, are a really incredible resource that is, as far as I know, I've lived in Toronto and Montreal, and this is the only place I've ever known community leagues to exist. But they are a lovely hub connecting folks in neighborhoods and still, have lots of initiatives that can reach a lot of people and bring folks together, even though we're apart. So that's if you're kind of at a loss of how to connect with those around you, maybe reach out to your community league.
That's a great suggestion. Okay, I've been hanging on to a couple of questions from some of the people that are attending the webinar. So I really want to get to those questions now,
Sure.
if that's okay. So Liliana asked, Olga, what's your art background?
What's my art background? So I have an undergraduate degree in studio art from the University of Guelph. And from there,
what mediums did you work in?
I primarily did drawing and painting, and more specifically oil painting. More recently, I've been a lot more interested in fiber art and textile. So I've been dabbling with cross stitching and learning weaving. I'm a lifelong crocheter. I call it the punk rock of knitting because in my mind it has no rules, even though it has plenty of rules. So yeah, I think I move from materials and yeah, I've been a lot more interested in, my background is Romanian. I was born in Romania, so I'm interested in connecting some of those embroidery and beading and those kinds of things and seeing what that looks like for me.
Great. I too am interested in fiber. Fiber pals. We got a question also from Christine. She wants to know what a typical art therapy session might look like.
Yeah. So art therapists work with individuals, couples, groups. It really depends on who the art therapist is and what they specialize in or what they're comfortable, who they're comfortable working with. So generally you would walk in to the therapy space, and I mean, if it's your first session, you would go through the limits of confidentiality and informed consent, like you would with a psychologist or a talk therapist, a counselor. And then some art therapists are more directive, so they might have, depending on whatever it is that the client is there to work on, they might have some project or a directive that they present to the client. So something like, draw me a picture of your family, or take this Play-Doh or plasticine and shape it into what you're feeling right now, for example. And then others are a lot less directive. So really letting the client explore materials that are in the space and pull whatever they're drawn to onto a table and letting them make the art. And then near the end of the session, there's conversation about what that process was like. So facilitated by the art therapist, just questions around, so what drew you to this color? What was it like for you to make this work of art? How are you feeling now? Do you feel like there's a difference in how you felt when you first came in versus how you're feeling now? Is your piece missing anything? Is there anything that you'd like to add or take away? So there's lots of dialogue, and I think that's where the richness of art therapy comes in, because that's when the process of art making kind of like folds itself and becomes one, and that's where there's a lot of the insight and kind of like the connections between experiences that clients can make for themselves. And we see clients for, we could do one session, or we can work with someone for years and years. So it really depends on what the client needs.
Thank you. That's really insightful into your practice. Mm-hmm. And what it might look like and what it might mean to kind of work through things in a visual way. I have one final question for you, Olga. What is the number one takeaway you would have everyone reflect on today?
Ooh, first thing that comes to mind is take care of yourself and of each other. We're all in this together, and it's really, really tough. But I think we can do it. And if there's anything you can do to just flick that little critic that's telling you that you're not good enough or you can't make that, or why are you even bothering to try? If you could do anything to flick them off your shoulder and take a hike, that would be lovely. At the end of the day, even if you were to make one attempt at creating something, that's a win, I think. And if not today, there's always tomorrow.
Yes. Olga, thank you so much for agreeing to dive into this topic with me and with us. Is there, Olga, before we sign off, maybe you could let everyone know where they can find you if they have any additional questions, or if they want to follow up with you.
Absolutely. So my practice is called Sparrow Creative Counseling Center. The best way to reach us is by going to our website, which is www.sparrowcreativecounseling.com. My email is olga@sparrowcreativecounseling.com. And we provide art therapy and counseling services, clinical supervision, consultation to a wide range of individuals right here in Edmonton. Even if you have a question for me about this conversation or anything that I do in my work, there's no silly question. Please reach out. I would love to hear from you. And if you're interested, I will be teaching a course about Art Hives at St. Stephen's College this summer. It's going to take place online in the last week of July. It's open to anybody, whether you're a student or not. It's open studies, so anybody can take it. And you can find more information on the St. Stephen's College website, which is universityofalberta.ca/St-Stevens? Question mark? No question mark. I'll have to double check that, but definitely St. Stephen's College here in Edmonton. Love to see you join our course.
I think I want to join, definitely.
Yeah, get in there.
Super
I'd
interesting.
love to learn from you.
Well, thank you, Olga, so much. Before we sign off, I just want to mention a couple of mental health resources that are available for everyone. They can be found on www.myhealth.alberta.ca. You can also text 211 for information about community resources in your area. Also 911 emergency services, 811 for HealthLink. Mental health hotline 1-877-303-2642, and the kids helpline 1-800-668-6868. Finally, tune in for more programming from your AGA, including our upcoming live conversation with Nam Kabeshi. This Thursday at noon, she'll be leading a talk on our current exhibition, Nests for the End of the World. So that's the upcoming thing. And then if you missed our previous events, or you didn't get to stay till the end of this one, or you want to review it again, then they're all recorded and they'll be able, you'll find them on our website. So with all of that information now sent out into the world, thank you again, Olga, for sharing your expertise and insights with us today.
Thank you so much, Dara, and thanks everybody out there in virtual land.
And thank you everyone who stuck with us for the full almost 50 minutes and taking the time to join us today and to ask questions. May you stay healthy and happy and creative during this unprecedented time. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.